demain n'aura pas lieu. Hein?
Hey guys, thanks for joining in. Wow.
Je distribue encore des bleus de travail. Qui sont les danseurs et danseuses qui veulent mettre les bleus. Maquillage, zombie party, c'est parti, c'est là-bas. N'hésitez pas si vous voulez. N'hésitez pas à vous faire maquiller.
SCT Sergeant Tripod, thanks for joining in. So I'm playing right now some of the footage from today's protest. This is on the streets of Paris, France. And so I'm going to let this play through first, and then we're going to talk through what I'm witnessing and what I'm learning and do a Q&A. Hey, Purple. So I wanted to start off first with showing what was going on with the march demonstration itself before we get into the riot footage. Hey, LAF. Switch that back around.
les amis, hey, c'est plus que la réforme des retraites, c'est pour les salariés. Casser les retraites, la rue répond. Résistance à ceux qui...
Excusez-moi, madame.
C'est mathématique. Il est tout seul en haut de la pyramide là. Il faut lui faire voir qu'il y a 10 ans. On est filmé, regarde, fais attention.
All right. Okay. I haven't gone live in forever, so I got to remember how to do this. All right. First of all, thanks for joining in. This is just going to be a very casual, like Q&A, and for me to debrief and update you guys about what's going on in Paris. First, before we dive into it, I was just playing some footage that is posted on my reporting channel, which is On the Ground with Tara. So if you are not subscribed there, please do me a solid. I am trying to grow that, grow my new channel, On the Ground with Tara. So go over there and subscribe to it, please. I need to get to 1,000 subs and 4,000 view hours in order to get it monetized. So for those of you who have been following me through my reporting journey, the Polish American Brotherhood, you guys notice that Polish American Brotherhood is now becoming is to its true intent. It was actually meant to be a Polish channel, hence the name Polish Brotherhood, and a project with my father and I. And so I am trying to build now a reporting channel to focus on my journalism, and that is On the Ground with Tara. And you guys can also follow me on all my social medias on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. That's Tara Poam. Earlier today, I was not live streaming the protest, but I was tweeting out clips of what was going on, first onto Twitter, and then I still have to update my Instagram. But when I am on the ground covering, I'm trying to tweet things out as they are happening when I am not live streaming. And Snooks, I did see your message earlier asking if I will be live streaming the protests here. I'm trying out some new gear, and it's a bit challenging to handle both the 360 and the phone for live streaming with trying to tweet things out. So right now, I'm not focusing on live streaming, but developing good quality footage while I'm here on the ground. So I'll let you guys know if I do switch things up and go back to my original path of being a live streamer at these events. But for now, I will be posting the tweets are going to be pretty live, but the footage will be following usually in the evening when I get back. So it is 2 a.m. here in Paris, France. So bonsoir and thanks for joining in. Okay, so what is going on? Oh, hey, Dad. So Poem Daddy, another channel to plug out there is Poem Daddy. That is my father. So Dad, I am back in my apartment, which is really central Paris. I absolutely love it. I had a nice hour-long walk to get back to my apartment because the metros were all closed due to the strike today, and I wasn't able to get an Uber either. So I had to walk back, and I'm thankful that I have a central Parisian apartment while I'm here on the ground covering things. So, Dad, I am safe. That was earlier today's from footage from earlier today, and I'm going to play for you guys another video that is posted currently on the ground. So I know a lot of you in the chat also join me for the premiere of that. These videos I have set for a premiere tomorrow. I'm letting my On the Ground channel have a head start with the footage for today, and I still owe you guys 360 footage. So I am going to actually sleep after this, and then I'll work on it tomorrow. All right, let's dive right into it. So what is going on here in Paris? So I arrived about 2 weeks ago, the day before Le Grave Janvier, am I saying that correct? Janvier 19, the 19th. So that was the first strike that had occurred for the pension reform. So what is going on with pension reform? You guys know it as retirement. And so there are 3 cornerstones to the proposed pension reform. First is to raise the age of the legal retirement age from 62 to 64. The second is to increase the number of contribution years in order to receive a full pension. So they're increasing that to 43 years of work to be able to receive your full pension. And then the third cornerstone is streamlining the individual specialized pension schemes that France has. They have I believe 42 or 43, so several dozen individual pension schemes ranging from the railway workers to the opera house, ballerinas. So each of these pension schemes have different retirement ages. For example, ballerinas can retire as early as 42. Railway drivers can retire as early as 54. So it takes into account the physical toll and labor that it takes onto the body. So people who may be exposed to like harsh chemicals allows them to have a different retirement and pension plan than the general pension. So about 80% of people belong to the general pension, and then the special pension schemes are about 20% of that. Okay, so why is this so controversial? You guys have to understand that, because I know from America's perspective, where we have a retirement age of 65, 67, and they are trying to raise it to 70. So I know from an American perspective, it's only a dream that the average retirement or the legal retirement age would be what it is here. But you have to understand this is seen as a social gain and progress in society. Within the French culture, for instance, the pension system was put in after World War II, and it was seen as a major social progress. So the French culture and society highly values this and sees it as a fundamental right. And so that's something that we as Americans can understand, because we know that our rights are God-given and not from the government, which is something that distinguishes America from the rest of the world, is the unique rights that are afforded to American citizens. And so here in France, they have a value on their social gains. So the pension system is seen as a fundamental right. And honestly, they pay so much in taxes here that it is a feeling that the government's stealing from you by making this type of reform. And so that is the feel that's going on in the street, and why people are fighting so much. Because I know you guys can understand this, that when a right is going to be taken away from the people by the government, you're never going to get that back. So you need to be fighting things as soon as. So when Macron had announced it, they had announced the first strike on the 19th, and then it went into Parliament on the 23rd was when it was introduced into Parliament, and now today was the second strike. I do predict that they're going to be increasing the amount of strikes. They're going to have a strike for the refinery workers, in terms of like taking to the streets in mobilization. That will be ongoing, at least for, I would say, the next like 50 days or so. They said that's the amount of time that is allotted as the maximum amount of time that is to stay in Parliament for amendments and debate. But the French people understand that if you don't fight for a right, and it's going to be chipped away at by the government, you're never going to get that right back. And then so it's something that needs to be protected and defended from the start. So the strike for the pension reform has a long history here in France. It was, you guys can totally fact check me on this, but I believe it was 2010 when they had raised the retirement age from 60 to 62. And then so now they're trying to raise it from 62 to 64. Like, how much is it going to keep going, and what are the people going to have left? So for instance, it started with the masks in the US, and then the forced vaccinations. So like, I remember when I was looking at the mask protests, I didn't understand why people were fighting so hard and protesting against masks. I thought it was a very simple thing. But as I've learned more and was exposed to going to the protests and understanding how people felt, it was because if the government's going to start telling you to do something that is not within their rights, then it's going to be taking rights away. So it starts with the masks and ends up being to force vaccinations. And so that is part of the reason you have this abstract fundamental value that the people have in their pension system. And to be honest, it's a good pension system, because when you compare France to the rest of the industrialized and Western world, it's got the second lowest rate of poverty for seniors. And that's in comparison to the US, to Germany, to Sweden. So in terms of social progress and taking care of people, it's been very good. Also, the French average life expectancy is 5 years higher than it is in the US. Like in the US, if we're like to be the best country in the world, we actually still have, the French have 5 years of greater life expectancy than those living in the US. I feel like in the US, we are slaves to the system and oppressed by it without even knowing it, by keeping us in this cycle of work. It's almost like you just get up, work, pay your taxes, and then go back and wake up, repeat, and do it again. So it's there's no, in a sense, enjoyment to life. And then another concern that the French people have with the increase in age is how it impacts those who do live in poverty, because it's a fourth of those who live in poverty don't even make it to 62. So when they're paying and contributing into the pension system, they don't even reach the age that they're able to enjoy it. So this is a historical time period that's going on in France right now, because it is the first time in more than a decade that all of France's 8 major unions have come together in solidarity to be calling for demonstrations and protests against these reforms. Okay, let me check down into the chat. So when I look down, I'm looking at the computer. Okay, Dad, retiring at 70, and I have no problem. That's because you're physically strong. Not everybody is able to have that, and that goes to also lifestyle choices, and if you enjoy your work, then it does actually feel like work. So I'm sure Dad's work, so that's why he doesn't mind working to 70. I will go and try and solve the homeless and retiree problem in America. So highlighting on your point about homeless and retiree problems, again, the French have the second lowest senior poverty level in the industrialized Western, they call it the OECD countries. So they're doing a good job when it comes to addressing poverty amongst retirees. Okay, let's talk through a little bit more history. Then we're going to play through some of the more heated coverage that we had on the streets of Paris earlier. So the estimate of, it's hard to go by numbers. I do feel like today's was bigger than the protests that had occurred on the 19th. They're estimating that 55,000 people took to the streets of Paris. The estimates are quite wide from the 19th protest. They're saying it was anywhere between 1.1 million and 2 million across France. So this is a protest that isn't just occurring here in Paris. There were over 200 that took place today all throughout France. Okay, so it seems like also the French have the protests are down to a form of an art here, because now that I've covered a few, 3 in the last 2 weeks, 3 major ones in the last two weeks, it seems that what you guys are going to see, for those who haven't seen the footage yet that I've posted on the ground, is the scenes including the Black Bloc, which we know as Antifa, and they do direct actions that then spark a confrontation and standoff, basically, that occurs with the police. So that's some of the footage that I will be showing in just a moment. But but okay, so some of the history. So France got the right to strike back in 1864. So this was almost 20 years earlier than the right to unionize. And so you can see like the power of that unions and workers have here in France, and that's not something that we see in the U.S. For instance, some of the stories that I have heard of the workers taking action in the strikes, like in Marseille, they had cut off power supply to the office of a politician that works in Macron's office, and they cut his power off for like 3 hours, and then they lowered the price for the bakers, because last week there was also a bakers protest. I had not covered that protest, but the footage from that looked amazing, with the French holding up baguettes and croissants as they were marching down the streets of Paris. And so that's basically like unheard of in the US. I feel like they would immediately be fired. Their neighbors would be fired, and they'd probably be like tossed in jail, saying, "Oh, it's 53 degrees here, so you're threatening the life of people by turning off their electricity." And then, but this shows like the power of the workers here, and so they do have the ability to. So across the eight different trade unions, you have the energy sector that's involved. You have the transit and transport sector that's involved. So like today, I had to walk almost an hour back after the protests because the metros weren't running. So in essence, it has the ability to be paralyzing the country. And then of course, oops, my light went off. Sorry, guys. Oh, well, it's off. This isn't that bad anyways. So there is the ability to be paralyzing the country, and that's not something that we're going to want to see, or, so Macron basically doesn't have the majority anymore in parliament. So all it takes is a few legislatures to then change their mind about the reform to then have this reform not go through. So we'll see what the next several weeks have. Okay, let's go through footage from earlier, and you guys can already see this on the ground. It's going to be posted on Polish American Brotherhood tomorrow, but you can watch it here as well. And hopefully I won't disappear. I feel like I clicked something and I disappeared off the screen earlier. Fatho. It's one of my favorite phrases, among the first phrases that I learned when I started covering the street. Okay. One moment, bear with me, guys.
Protesters are gathering in Paris to begin today's mobilization against the French government's plan to increase the retirement age from 62 to 64 here in France. I'm Tara Shapansky, and thanks for joining me on the ground in Paris, France. Strikes and protests are prevailing all throughout France today, January 31st, 2023. Less than 2 weeks ago, strikes and protests began with an estimated 2 million people taking to the streets. When the government aims to take away the rights from the people, the French do not hesitate to move in mass mobilization. Now, what is unique about this protest? It's one of the largest in recent French history, with all of 8 of France's major unions coming together in the call for solidarity in this fight. Pension is seen as a social right. And if rights are not fought for and defended from the government, what's going to be left? For more coverage of France's pension reform protests, subscribe to On the Ground with Tara on YouTube.
So the trash can burning is a very common sight. I felt like almost like every block there was a trash can that was set on fire. And my French friends were like, oh yeah, that's completely normal. Okay, so this is the incident that sparked the riot police joining in to break up the demonstration. So when Antifa, the Black Bloc, engage in direct action, they've been targeting at the banks, so you see a lot of the banks had been boarded up, more than the other businesses. So when Antifa is engaging in the direct action after this part, which then sparks the confrontation, they don't want any reporters or cameras out there. So you gotta keep them quite hidden, otherwise they will come at you. For those of you who saw my coverage from the 19th, they did come after me when I was filming them going at the bank. So it was a lot more discreet this time, including getting rid of my yellow jacket. So usually the Black Bloc and Antifa, they're ahead of the protest march. So the violence that follows and ensues from their actions occurs usually ahead of the protest. And so this is going on before the marchers from the parade, the actual protest. And you can see in the background there's a little fire that has started. Somebody threw something that then started a little fire there. I only caught the smoke, but on the 360 I showed it starting. So these guys seem to be trying to get other people to join hand in hand in front of the police line. So there were a lot of broken glass throughout the different bus stops along the route, and graffiti. Then the dumpsters being tossed into the streets, fires being set, trash cans set on fire. So this footage I'm showing now is just footage I took off of my iPhone, so this is what I've been tweeting out while I was at the protest. And then more here. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, please follow me on Twitter at TerraPoem. I go with TerraPoem, of course, with Poem being my homage to Polish American Brotherhood. And it simplifies spelling out Szczepanski instead. More trash can fires. So this happened a few times also, that there were barricades that were around construction sites, and I saw them dismantling those barricades and then setting them up on the street. Thank you, Snooks, for sharing my Twitter. I am thankful I had a gas mask today because the police were very gas heavy. Very generous in the gas today. Thanks, guys. So when the gas was being checked, they would kick it back and forth between the police and the protesters. That's why they're good at soccer, right? It was like almost at every intersection there was a clash that was between the police and several mischievous protesters, rioters, Black Bloc, Antifa. So it was almost like tear gas at every intersection along the way. Selfie moment. Okay, so usually the biggest risks that you have to watch out for when you are covering up these protests is projectiles. So I have to definitely pick up a helmet for the next one. And you basically just stay out of the runway between the police and the Black Bloc because they will bulldoze you over. The press will bulldoze you over too. See, this is how they were setting up the barricade. There are several arrests that were made at this time also. Reminds me of the French Revolution. To the barricade! There's an arrest. Super chats are greatly appreciated, guys. I am here live with you guys. This is footage from earlier today. You know, the crowd that's around when the direct reaction is occurring seem very supportive of it. They go into the chants of anti-capitalism, ACAB, so the typical chants that you hear from Antifa. They do support it. They do seem supportive of that, and then this is a regular crowd that's not dressed Black Bloc. But then again, like those who are head of the actual like protest and parade themselves, and with the Black Bloc, would probably be supportive of Black Bloc themselves as opposed to just the regular true protesters that are there protesting against pension reform that are in the parade from behind. So all of this is going on ahead of the march. Yes, so the catalyst for the police when they do a direct action. So in all of the direct actions I've seen from, this is my third pension reform protest here, it starts with an attack that goes on, that goes to the bank. Some sort of vandalism, kicking at the building. It became aggressive with people going in and out of the building earlier today as well. But this is the catalyst. The direct action is with the intention of having the police, this is what I'm assuming, with the intention of having the police come out and then at the time that they're basically tear gassing those Black Bloc protesters and rioters, it gets mixed in also with, of course, people. Oh, gotcha. Facebook. The regular protesters that aren't causing violence. Now we get to more scenes of, this is in front of Napoleon's tomb actually. And so another clash, this became the ground for another huge clash that went on for almost an hour. The regular protesters actually then left with the floats and the cars that were part of the parade line. They started leaving the area when the riot was going on and the clash was going on with the police. Ultimate podcast. This is earlier today. So this is how I spent my day. You know, lovely sightseeing in Paris. Just kidding. No, we're here to cover what's going on the ground. Snooks, you're right. Like I heard some people being like, oh, Black Bloc putant, which is a French curse word. So if this reform does go through, it's going to be impacting those who were born after 1969. It's going to be a gradual increase to over the next couple years. Basically, they're incrementing it like every couple of months to raise the age until they hit 62. So those who are currently 61, it's not going to be like overnight. One of those little gas canisters hit me in the leg earlier today too. But it wasn't a flying shell that hit my head. There were bricks that were going through the air. I was like, you know, I see water bottles quite often. Glass bottles is probably the most common thing that's being flung into the air. Last week I saw a huge tree branch that was like flung into the air. But today there were bricks that were being thrown. Yeah, I need to get a helmet. There's the Eiffel Tower. Okay, so now the protest has, the riot has subsided, and so the regular protesters are now coming back into the park. So they actually left when the riot was going on. Like these floats, these balloons, those who were marching and parading, they left the area while the conflict was going on, the confrontation with the police. And so at the point that it subsided, almost an hour later, that's when they're coming back in. The Ultimate Podcast, it's estimated that 55,000 people took to the streets during today's protest in Paris. In Paris alone. So an electric scooter that was flung into a vehicle. So the protest is like a mixture between a party, a block party, and a riot. I'm Tara Shapansky, and thanks for joining me on the ground from the streets of Paris, France, where protests turned intense with intermittent riots breaking out on the scene. Damage from what I witnessed ranged from graffiti, broken glass like the bus stop behind me, garbage set on fire, barricades used to obstruct from construction sites, and an attack on the bank, as well as damaged vehicles. Police dispersed tear gas to break up crowds as projectiles were thrown in the air and crowds chanted ACAB. For coverage, please subscribe to On the Ground with Tara on YouTube. All right. Okay, so if you guys search on Twitter, it's hashtag Griv31st Janvier, if I spelled Janvier correctly, January. But under that hashtag, you'll be able to see today's today's footage, including like aerial shots of the massive crowds that were out there. I wanted to circle back to a question that was shown earlier because I was talking through the protest footage and it was too loud, but I definitely wanted to answer: is the crowd in support of like this direct action? And from what I witnessed, like what is the feel of the people that are there if they're in support of the action? So these direct actions in Antifa and the Black Bloc protesters are in front of the actual like parade line where the official parade line starts. So what I've noticed over the course of the last 3 protests I've attended and covered is that they tend to go in front, and then before the actual protesters come through, they do a direct action, which the last 3 have included, have all been attacking a bank building. And this is the catalyst and spark for the police to then to join into the protest to break up the demonstration, which then blends into the actual like parade line protesters coming in, because that's usually when, you know, we have tear gas that is being thrown in at this time, and then that all mixes together. So the people that are there, the vibe is that they are in support of the direct action, but they're in front of the actual start of the protest. So they're, even though they're not masked up, they're regular people, they're not participating, they are chanting along with, so they do, you know, express like sympathy or support of what's going on there. And so this crowd is also the one that is very feisty, to say the least, in terms of battling off with the police. Because what I witnessed with when the riot had broken out in the park that's in front of that building that you guys saw, that's actually Napoleon Bonaparte's tomb in front of the hotel in Valdez. And so they left, like the parade of floats and balloons, they left the area when the riot was going on. Then this riot was going on for probably about an hour of like intermittent, the police standing there, and as they move, sometimes like it would then be sparked up again when projectiles were flung to the police, and then they responded back with tear gas. So, and then some more standing around, and then the crowd jeering and chanting ACAB back at the police, more tear gas, and that went on for about, I would say, about an hour. But the actual like protesters and marchers, they left. And then as soon as when this scene had subsided, they came back. So that's what was going on. Any chance of live streaming when I am there? Okay, so I'm not using my live view when I'm here, and I'm using a 360 camera. So I have the 360 camera does have the ability of going live, but it's pretty challenging to since I'm solo out there. It's like when I live stream, I have to focus just on the live streaming, and then you won't be able to really see the direct action because they'll come at you if you have the camera out during the live action, the direct action activity. So I'm a little bit more discreet around the Black Bloc protesters. So I don't like the 360 camera that's out. I have other actually like hidden cameras. So some of the footage you saw there was a blend of not just from my cell phone, but other cameras that are not visible that are on me. So I'm able to kind of capture more with that. So I'll see if I'm able to do the live streaming, but right now I'm focusing on the other gear. But in overall, like I have to say, I actually feel safer here, even though there's a lot more going on the streets here than some of the protests I've covered in the U.S. Other than the moment that they're doing that direct, when they're doing direct actions or like the graffiti breaking the glass, like if your camera isn't out during that scene, they don't go directly at the people. Like I feel in the US, just by merit of being press, they'll go after you. But that's not the vibe that I'm getting here. The biggest challenges that you would have to face is dodging those projectiles, so that I'll feel a lot more secure when I pick up a helmet. And the first time I was actually using a gas mask was on the 19th, and I broke it because I didn't preload the cartridge beforehand. So I did actually break the gas mask trying to scramble putting that on while holding the camera, while trying to film, and then put this thing on me. So I did pick up another gas mask, and today I was quite thankful I had it because the tear gas was like everywhere. So projectiles going through the air, avoid when the police and the black bloc are literally like clashing at each other, because of course they're going to run you down if you're standing in the way. So tricks I've learned from that is to stand with a wall behind my back or up against a tree. So I tend to be filming from there. I do like filming with the 360 camera because I'm able to capture from above while still keeping a distance. So I'm gonna play around with streaming from the 360. I'll see how that works out. The next protest that I'm planning on covering is going to be in London, and that's February 6th. I'll take a day trip over there, and so there's going to be a massive hospital walkout strike that's going to be happening. The English aren't as, I would say, feisty as the French are. So do we anticipate that into breaking out into riot? Probably unlikely, but I'm here covering the cost of living crisis, and so Paris was an excellent base for this. There's protests going to be going on in several of the cities that are around. So if you guys hear about a protest that's going on here that's nearby that I can possibly get to, I will try and cover it. I am in Paris until the last week of February, so still got another couple of weeks ahead of me of covering what is going on here in Paris, so and in France. So to summarize what is going on here in France is we got the pension reform protests that are now ongoing. Sometimes they break into riots. Like overall, you got to consider that with over 2 million people joining into the protest. From the footage that I had seen, it's really Paris that kind of breaks into the riots, and that is because of the black bloc direct actions that they're having here on the streets. But this isn't to characterize, even though we're covering this, guys, this isn't to characterize the entire protest as a whole. You have teachers that are participating. You had a lot of grandmas that were out there, and you can see from the footage of the actual protesters, they're there with the true intentions of protesting against the government. So you have the black bloc who become aggressive and probably utilize these opportunities to have clashes then with the police. But I want to put it out there that this isn't categorizing the protests as a whole. Even if I'm there covering this part of the protest, take that with a grain of salt to understand that people are standing up against the government, fighting for their rights. For those who don't understand why they may value this age hike from 62 to 64, when in the US we have 65 and 67, the average in Europe is 65. This is a fundamental right to the French people. So they know, and you guys know, we all know that if the government takes something away, they're never going to give it back. And it starts with small steps, and then eventually, there's nothing that's going to be left. So even in the US, they're trying to be boosting our retirement age to 70. And the French don't want to see that happen here. They pay so much in taxes, a lot more here, a lot more than what we pay into the US. So it's their money. It's a form of a social security, but it's not welfare, because these people work, they put the money in to their contribution and they get it back. The French have the pay-as-you-go type of system it's the current workers are then paying for the pensioners. So when the system was initially, we haven't covered why these pension reforms are happening. it's the same thing as with the rest of the industrialized world. People are living longer. And so when this pension system was originally put into place, you had a ratio of about 8 workers to 1 pensioner. And now it's like 1.7 and to one one pensioner. And so they're going to be running into a huge deficit. So those who are opposed to the reforms feel that the other solutions are to, tax the uber rich, or it's how the government decides to allocate the money. And so to be taking it out of the pension system when it's something that is a social right here, the French are not going to have it. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this live. Thanks for joining in. Let me just quickly peruse through the chat. Any other little questions? Ozzy, yes, there was a riot in Paris today during the pension reform protest. Yeah, it's hard to, I'm not close to the age of retirement, but I can see from my parents and everything, though my dad's like, oh, I can work till I'm 70. That's like my mom saying like, oh, I was skinny until after I had children. I'm like, you were malnourished in the Philippines, Mom. Dad came from a communist country, so he's used to working his whole life. Okay. So I'll try to become a little bit more regular with doing these lives. It is 3 a.m. here with the time difference. So I want to thank you guys for joining into today's Q&A, watching the footage. If you're not already subscribed to On the Ground with Tara, I can't push that enough because I'm trying to, we're trying to get that channel monetized also. So I'm like at 560 subs there. It has to get to 1,000 and it has to get to 4,000 view hours. So if you guys want to watch I am posting things on Polish American Brotherhood to drive some of the, my followers there onto the new channel. But if you guys see me post on both channels and you want to watch the footage, watch it on the ground so that I can get those view hours. I am trying to post it first on the ground and then delay putting it onto Polish American Brotherhood. So if you want to see the footage a little bit earlier, then Polish American Brotherhood, watch it on the ground. But yes, I need those view hours. So please watch the footage that's there. If you're even doing errands or whatever, just leave it on. I'll appreciate it. But like, share, subscribe. I will be I have to work on the 360 footage to be putting out there. So that's going to be additional viewpoints of today's riot. And then also it'll have a better sense of like the how large the crowd was. But it was a good protest. It's a good protest. I'm in one piece. So I consider that always a success. All right, guys. Thanks once again. And yes, so please like, share, subscribe, and follow me on all my social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and that's at Tara Poam. All right, night, guys. Bye.